In this video, I've skipped ahead to exercise number 3, still dealing with the first section of chapter 7, 7.1, exercise 3. And here, I'll just simply go through the basic procedure to solve problems in this exercise. And this will be the basic procedure for the entire chapter, not just this section, but for 7.2, 7.3, 7.4, and even 7.5 and 7.6. So this video will be quite important. You might want to return to it as we get a little deeper into the section, just really as nothing more than a refresher. So the first step in solving these problems is just simply to copy down the problem as it's given to you. So I've gone ahead and done that here in the first problem. In this particular problem, problem number 1, we're given two premises. Premise number 1, the main operator is a horseshoe statement. It of course is complex, but the main operator is that first horseshoe. And then in premise 2, we're just simply given a negated variable, in this case not C. Now to the right, to the far right of that second premise, you'll notice a single slash followed by another statement. In this case, that statement is not A, if you can't decipher my chicken scratches here. So what is that slash not A about? Well, everything to the right of this slash is the conclusion that we're asked to derive. So this is the task at hand. We're going to have to take these two lines, these two premises that are given to us, and by applying some combination of our 4 rules, and that's probably not at all clear to us just yet, just by looking at the setup of the problem, but we're to, again, take these two lines, these two premises, and by applying some combination of 4 rules, we want to get down to some line that looks exactly like the conclusion that we're asked to derive, in this case, not A. Now, we probably can't tell immediately just by looking at the problem how many lines that's going to take, how many different steps we'll have to go through, but we're not done with the problem until we get down to not A. So how do you know where to begin? Well, there are a couple of basic strategies here that we'll be employing throughout chapter 7. The first basic strategy, and it doesn't always work, but it's a good starting place, is to try to spot the variable, or as the case might be, variables, that you're asked to derive and the information that's given to us. So we're after not A, and I'll go searching through the information that is given to us until I can spot something that's pretty close to the not A. Now obviously in these two lines we don't have a not A, but we do have an A. So by examining the location of the variable that we're asked to derive, I can tell right away that I'm going to have to, using our 4 rules, break apart line number 1, and I'm not going to be able to stop until I get, in fact, not just simply the A by itself, but rather the not A. So that's strategy number 1. Try to spot the variable that you're after in the information that you're given. Then you've got to think about how it is that you're going to get that information out, how you're going to isolate, in this case, the A. So this brings us then to strategy number 2. Strategy number 2 is to think about what you could possibly do. At this point, there aren't many options at our disposal. In fact, in this case, there's just one option that we really truly have, given the limited number of rules that we have to work with. But again, think about what you could possibly do given the information that you have, and further the rules that we've learned thus far. Could we do DS, disjunctive syllogism? Well, there's no wedge here to work with, no wedge to break apart, so that's out. Same goes for HS, same for modus tollens, and really there's only one way to begin this problem. So I'm just going to dive in head first. To start things out, we could do 1 and 2 modus ponens. So we need to keep track of the moves that we made. This is the justification. 1 and 2 modus ponens. Those are the line numbers we're using. That's the rule that we use, just as we did the justification for the previous exercise, exercise 1. And the conclusion that we get from that is the consequent. Horseshoe statement number 1, antecedent to that horseshoe statement 2. We get out the consequent by itself. Here, everything to the right of the main operator in line number 1, everything contained there in parentheses. We get A horseshoe C. So that's in fact the only opening move that we can make. But we're not quite obviously done yet. We've got a new line now at our disposal, a new line to work with, but our new line doesn't match up with the conclusion we're asked to derive, so we have to make at least one other move. Now we've isolated the A. Initially it was a part of something pretty complex, line number 1, and we're closer to getting it by itself. We've got A here, note the location, we've got A as the antecedent of a horseshoe statement. What rule allows us to get out the negation of the antecedent of a horseshoe statement? And here, the more familiar you are with our rules, the quicker these answers, the quicker these moves will come to you. But the rule that allows us to get out the negation of the antecedent is, of course, modus tollens. To do modus tollens, you need not only the horseshoe statement, which we now have in line 3, but you also need the negation of the consequent. The consequent is C, the negation of that would be not C, which lo and behold is exactly what we have in line 2. So the next thing to do seems to be 2 and 3, not modus ponens, but this time modus tollens. Horseshoe statement, negation of the consequent, and what we're allowed to get out is the negation of the antecedent. Antecedent is A, negation of that, just throw in a tilde, would be not A. Now our line 4 matches up precisely with what appears just to the right of that slash there. Our line 4 matches up with the conclusion that we're asked to derive, and so we're now finished with the problem. And that's the basic procedure for solving problems in exercise 3, not only for 7.1, but for the rest of chapter number 7. Try to spot the variable or variables that you're after, and the information that that's given to you, and also think about the moves that you could possibly make. Now, there's no hard and fast set of rules here when to use which rule. You just simply have to, and this is kind of the frustrating part about these problems here in chapter 7, what eventually will make it so difficult. You just simply have to think your way through the problem according to the rules of logic. Here's kind of a cheesy way to think about these problems, and I realize it is kind of a cheesy way, but it might be useful for some of you. Think of the conclusion that you're asked to derive, in this case not A, as the blueprints of a statue that you've been commissioned to carve. Think of this as a picture, a photograph of the final product, what exactly it is that you want it to look like. So if this is the blueprint of the finished product, think of the information that's given to you, in this case these first two premises, as the raw materials from which you're to carve this finished product. Think of it as a big raw hunk of marble. So if this is the material, then think of your rules, modus ponens, modus tollens, hypothetical syllogism, and disjunctive syllogism. Think of these 4 rules as the tools that you're given to carve the statue. Think of, for instance, modus ponens. I warned you this was kind of cheesy, but think of modus ponens, for instance, as the hammer. Think of modus tollens maybe as a chisel, so on and so forth. So again, your task is to take this raw hunk of marble and using the tools that are given to you, carve the statue, whittle it down, hammer away at it until it looks exactly like the finished product, exactly like you want it to look. So that's exactly what we're doing here in chapter 3, as cheesy as that analogy might be. That's the basic procedure.